Alright, another draft physics video production. Comments and such. Probably something else, but we'll see how it goes. Something on gravity, maybe. I believe Ken did an experiment with a monster magnet. This is his own vernacular. A second smaller cylinder magnet suspended from a string. Now, a group of round magnets, for unknown reason why he would choose that. And a third smaller cylinder steel also suspended from a string. Well, not suspended, so wrong there. Ken dangled both the small magnet and the small steel ball over the top of the monster magnet. The result observed in Ken's experiment, I think, would be helpful to you to see for yourself. Now, the results are just completely predictable by this conventional model of magnetism. Evidence of absolutely nothing new, or no hyperboloids or toroids or anything moving around the magnet. I do not really care about who is correct or incorrect. Well, that's just too stupid an attitude. I just can't, you don't care. All right, whether they, what, I put dog poo in your dinner, it doesn't matter to you. I mean, it's just an amazing statement. I appreciate your effort in trying to explain things, yes, but you're obviously pointing out how it's absolutely pointless because you people are impervious to explanation, okay, that doesn't have unicorns in it. This is a difficult subject to explain at time. No, it really isn't. That's the whole point, if you're careful. The point is any theory can be, found to be inadequate and insufficient. And you're really just trying to measure the sufficiency of some notion of the reality and to say, is there evidence to support it? And is the evidence good? Or is it kind of mushy? And I'm just saying there's no mush in this evidence in the sense that Faraday only spent years playing with magnets. I mean, literally, hours, a year's worth of hours, okay, doing everything you could do to a magnet, okay? I mean, I'm sure he did all kinds of things you don't even want to hear about. So, there's this, you're not going to find some new phenomenon with a piece of string and a magnet. You're just not. But I think Ken is right on this one. Well, you think so, why? Why do you think so? Because he uses a jargon, and you fall for the simplest card trick. I mean, it's just shell game. The hole in the board is right there in front of you. You can see the hole that the little ball falls through, and you're still saying, "Oh yeah, it's a game worth playing." Peace to you. So again, peace to me in what? In the war against bullshit, you're wishing me peace. Oh, isn't that nice? Sorry, but this is just, you're just too cliche. So you post two links to two crap videos, and he says these two videos should help you visualize what's going on with the centripetal and centrifugal. No, there's no help at all. This is absolutely useless junk. So let's do a little tiny bit of this. I mean, it's just junk. As an experiment, it's junk. Garbage. Crap. Shit. Nonsense. Oh, we have to endure a 15-second commercial. Oh, so 103 to 2. So only 2 people could figure out this is crap science. Oh, great. So this is how he starts the video.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Uncovering the Missing Secrets of Magnetism.
So he's arguing that somehow this is doing this forever. This is a perpetual motion. No such thing.
Here we have 4
little round magnets that he stuck together and then taped for whatever dumbass reason, right? There's just no way to explain why did he do that? Why is it crooked? Why don't you have the string hanging from the center of the magnet? I mean, little obvious things.
6mm ball magnets. I just have 2 of them taped white and 2 of them taped red, and they're hanging from a tripod.
Yes, taped for whatever reason. Okay. Like he didn't even care to figure out which pole is which way anyway.
Here, this is a N45 Gauss 6" by 2" extremely powerful beast. You probably think I just got done spinning the 2 ball magnets.
Yes, I'll bet $100 he just got done spinning the two ball magnets. Yes, I'll bet $100. I'll bet $1,000 that he'll have no evidence that it just does that. Unless he's bouncing on the floor.
But no, they've been twitching like that for hours now.
Okay, so that's a claim he's making, right? I'd argue it's an outrageously silly claim. It's not going to twitch that long, nowhere near that long. It'll settle down eventually. The whole thing is caused by it's an eccentric orbit. It takes a while for the eccentric orbit for the thing to finally process into the center. But it will do that. That's exactly what it's doing. It's just processing. Eventually all the energy will bounce out of the spring. So it's like a really good spring, where you flip it and it springs back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's a pendulum, for fuck's sake. Okay, you can swing a pendulum and eventually it stops moving. Yes, if you have a very efficient system, very little friction, it'll take a while.
The reason being is that they are hovering a hair off center of the centripetal returning convergent.
Yes, they're off center because your string is off the center of the magnet. That's why they're off center. They can't possibly line up straight because the string that's causing the tension that's keeping them from crashing into the magnet is not centered on the mass of the magnet. So duh, of course it's off center.
Magnetic field, and it's perpetually twitching like that.
But it's not perpetually doing any such thing, so that's just another horseshit lie. So let's just play the little experiment. So he flings the magnet into the other magnet as if this will prove something. But somehow this proves there's a tornado at the top of that magnet going this way. There's something spinning this way. Doesn't prove any such thing. Doesn't show that there's any motion around the magnet. Again, this idea that the magnet's doing this and the magnet's doing this is nonsense. There's no experiment demonstrating any such motion is taking place, that any force is moving this way or any force is moving from the top of the magnet to the bottom of the magnet. There's only evidence that there's a force radiating from the magnet in straight lines.
In a clockwise fashion, so let's give it a little clockwise spin here.
Yeah, so why just do it counterclockwise? Wouldn't make any difference. And so we have no evidence they even put a swivel on this string. So part of the problem is going to be is the string is winding up now and it'll unwind. So that's another problem with this stupid experiment.
It's centering itself.
So you can see it changed direction. So it's now just unwinding.
The centrifugal,
and then it'll have to wind back again and wind back again and wind back again.
As any magnet does, it wants to terminate the dead center, centripetal.
Now this is just gravity. It'll do the same thing. Any force will do the same thing because it overshoots. As it flies through the magnet, it's getting re-accelerated, right? That's how it decelerates, and because the force is pulling on it. And so the acceleration takes place, but unfortunately it's accelerating too fast, so it overshoots the other side. And then it just keeps overshooting and overshooting and overshooting. But it takes a while for all the energy to fall out of the system because there's not too many friction points. There's certainly no friction with the magnet itself. So that's all you're taking advantage of. But totally unremarkable. Totally done a million times. Like I said, Faraday spent his years of his life playing with magnets. You're just not going to undo it. Oh, jeez, this is so annoying. So let's go with this other one. It's just so stupid. And people, they fall for this crap. Another 15-second commercial. Oh, disgusting. The scientist needs 15-second commercials.
Okay, let's take another look at magnetism. Here we have a monster magnet. It says
so obviously the magnets will stack quite easily. They'll also sit next to each other. You can just put them on there that way, and that's the way they'll stay because there's force going straight up. Okay, that's all one polarity here. There's no red side of the magnet leaking through to say, whoa, don't do something different. Obviously, over here on the edge, completely different. This is where the dipole is in. Okay, this side of the magnet is now can reach this little object and it's a steel ball. That means not magnetic already, so it's just going to align its magnetic field with this magnet. And so this is unremarkable also that it would find peace there. But if you just move it a little bit over here, it'll shoot right to the center. That's what it'll do. Move it over here, shoot to the center. Just the way you would predict. It'll move into the strongest magnetic field. So nothing remarkable here at all. And then he does this silly thing, which is just so silly.
Much better
So
view.
again, so like this has been done literally a million times already. Putting a compass, essentially taking a magnet and putting it around a magnet to see which way the compass lines up. Totally unremarkable. Again, just an amazingly poor demonstration. There's no evidence that the magnet wants to swing around and around and around. No evidence that it wants to go in these directions. None. Zero. No force pulling it in any other way except towards the magnet. Exactly the way you would expect.
Of what is happening on a magnet when you use a monster like this as a demonstration tool. You see how we're getting attraction at the centripetal point at the very dead
You're getting attraction over the entire surface, and that angle changes as you get near the edge of the magnet again, and you introduce the two poles of the magnet. You make the other pole of the magnet visible.
center of this magnet. Now you'll also notice as I rotate around in a circle on the magnet.
Exactly like I said, this has been known for 300 years. Totally unremarkable.
Notice the precession angle?
The precession angle, he calls it. There's no precession angle. There's now exposure to a dipole, and now the dipole will line up with the dipole. When you're across the top surface of the magnet, you're basically moving across a monopole. And so it lines up as a monopole would. The one end's going to be totally repulsive, and the other end's going to be totally attracted. So it's going to line up straight into the magnet. And then as you introduce it to the purple, so to speak, the mixed color, it's going to adjust its position to the balance that's in that position. That position has a certain amount of purpleness. It's either blue purple or red purple, and depending on how blue or red it is, it's going to make the magnet turn in a different position. Clearly, if it wasn't in the bag, it would just shoot to the magnet. Blah 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 blah. Just totally unremarkable. And he just does the same crap over and over again. Like I said, this has been done
Gauss rating
so
isn't that high,
many
we're talking about
times.
major volume.
So maybe he's doing this stupid volume crap again. No evidence that this magnet gets weaker by anything other than the inverse square law, like every other magnet. Nothing. Well, I guess it's the R cubed law. But anyway, just no evidence of anything new or anything conflicting with conventional theory in any way, in terms of, they don't have a theory of why magnets do what they do, but I'm just saying they don't have, it's nothing, this has already been seen a million times. So anyway, but you just can't, there's no point in talking to these people. They want to believe, so they'll just show them a picture of a cigar and they'll say, yeah, that's a UFO. I can see the label of the cigar right on the cigar, but yeah, it's a cigar, so cigars mean anything cigar shaped is UFO, right? So cigars are UFOs. Okay, got it. I'll believe it. Alright, this is birthday crap, who cares? You can't even pronounce his YouTube channel. Why should I have to pronounce Greek names? I just, what? It's my obligation. I might do the Jesus thing, out of some kind of courtesy, like, okay, I'll pretend I know your lingo, and I won't say Jesus. But why exactly? Do I have to learn all the other languages and learn how to pronounce it right? Do you think this asshole had permission to take this other guy's name? Whoever Theodore Papapopoulos was. Do you think he asked the dead guy, hey, can I steal your name and do my retarded bullshit on top of your name? You think he ever did that? Do you think that was one of those questions you might ask Ken? Did you ask permission to steal somebody else's identity and pretend that you have something to do with him when he never met you? He never got to say, I don't want that fat ass talking for me. Did he have any choice in the matter? Maybe I should do it to you, Justin. Maybe I'll change my name to Justin Zinneman, okay? I'll find a picture of you, a sculpture of some kind, and I'll stick that as my icon. Would you appreciate that, Justin? Would that be justice, in your opinion? Fuckhead. Not a very respectable way. Yeah, again, not very respectable to steal other people's identity, and clearly not very respectable to sit there and make arguments to dead people's pictures and say, I'm going to defeat you in a debate now that you're dead. So this fucking dumbass, right? This stupid Ken Wheeler jerk who has no fucking goddamn courtesy in any conversation he ever has, because he never has it with anybody who can fight back. So he can call them all kinds of names, all right, and they don't get to fight fucking back. And he's done to everyone, every single person who's ever asked for the right to argue with this fuckhead gets treated like shit by this fuckhead. Okay, because he has all the controls, because he has all the power, he has all your stupid idiotic views, you retards. And so he can get away with that horse shit. Because he doesn't take on anybody who can fight back. Or who will fight back. I mean, obviously, Michio Kaku isn't going to worry about Ken Wheeler's trash talking. Not very respectable way to start a video about a dumbass. Well, I think it's exactly appropriate. He deserves no courtesy. He is so fucking rude. I mean, it's just an amazing to sit there and tell me that I'm committing a trespass because I don't want to speak Greek. Fuck you. I have no obligation. Fucking asshole. God. You people are just such douches. Alright, fuck off. Alright. Well, I mean, stupid shit like half course about string theory. Yeah, well, Masterful, this seems a little snarky, actually. Well, I would mail you some stupid shit like a half course about string theory. Yeah, he sent me a DVD. Very nice of him a couple of years ago. But, it was I played it and I said, this is fucking string theory. This is retarded. Yeah. Sorry, I mean, it was. Yes, I hated it. But I don't have your new mailing better for you. Yes, I guess it is. Your PayPal still works. Yes, that's a nice statement. Thank you. Maybe you're a sick offense. See, that's just not very nice. Can pony up some extra cash so you could have a happy birthday feeling again. Yeah, unfortunately, it just doesn't happen too often. Unless you beg for money, you don't get it. So you really have to point people to it. And I think that's just stupid, so I don't buy it. But anyway, it is a little irritating, I gotta say. But anyway, there's a couple of people who are pretty reliable every now and then. They, thank you. But to the rest of you, yeah, fuck you. That's alright. I got enough to live. I can survive. Bread and water isn't that expensive. Alright. Hey, do you think many people have caught on that perv action? And all your fly-by-night fans who come and go like a flash in the pan. I don't even know who those flash in the pans would be exactly, but whatever. Are all just sock accounts by Superior Mind to give you attention you so desperately beg for. So again, I don't beg for it. I obviously don't treat the Superior Mind like some sort of cherished, precious thing, do I? I'm often saying, well, that was kind of a stupid way to say it, or I wouldn't have said it that way, or so there's just no evidence of this please praise me bullshit. On another note, you have still not realized that the core of your theory depends on pull, which is just so idiotic. I mean, it just can't possibly. I mean, I think I've ruled it out entirely. I mean, you can't get any simpler than Cannonball crashing into boat, right? I mean, you just can't get any simpler in terms of not a pull. And he's going to keep saying there's some kind of pull. It's just so fucking idiotic. The very thing you so vehemently deny. Well, I don't vehemently doing it, but I'm doing it in kind of a... What are you, fucking insane? How do you turn a cannonball crashing into, say, a ship and blowing a hole in it a pull interaction? How did the boat pull the cannonball? No, I won't clue you in because it is so much more fun to watch you blunder around in the dark after 10 years. No, you're being entertaining now. Yes, I'll concede. Oh, that's all there was. Damn. You didn't explain anything again. So Superior Mind says, well, they aren't me. I couldn't be bothered. Plus, due to business reasons, I need to stay in good standing with Google. I usually don't even remember to rate videos. I listen to some in the background while I work out of interest, whatever that means. Occasionally I find some free time to say something or argue. For example, when someone asserts something like depends on pull, I say, let's see the evidence for this illogical assertion. Well, I mean, it's on its face an insane assertion. It's certainly an extraordinary assertion, that a cool cue ball banging into a bunch of other pool balls is somehow a pull event. Pull dynamics are constructed from a combination of push operations. Well, that's about the only way you can do anything is push. That's right. Yeah, you pull on the doorknob, you're really pushing on the back of it. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. Where the cause and effect chain in pull. Yeah, how do you make a pull? Without pushing somewhere. What distance? Is it magical? How is that supposed to work mechanically? Well, we won't get an answer to that. So then this Anthony guy chimes in. So you're basically an armchair physicist, consultant, drive-by commentator douchebag. And why is that? Because he explained that he doesn't have the sock accounts and explained how he does know that a push isn't a pull. Like we don't know that about you already. So, and in what sense do you know that? From what evidence? So I don't know who this snarky piece of useless shit is, but that was a completely irrational comment. So it's probably this guy's sock account, the WOT. So there's been like 56 WOT accounts. So let's understand this is a notorious fake human. I'm not saying the universe depends on pull. Well, you're obviously arguing that somehow pull is fundamental or elemental, more elemental than a cannonball or a bowling ball smashing into bowling pins. More elemental than that. Nor am I defending the mainstream. Well, it seems like you really are. I mean, you can't get really around it, I don't think. But I don't know. I have no horse in that race of push versus pull. Well, that's elemental physics, frankly. Left, right, up, down. I mean, these are kind of fundamentally opposite concepts. And if you're not going to choose a horse, then what are you doing here, you lunatic? Why are you bothering? So I am not obligated to provide any evidence. Well, I think you're always obligated when you make an assertion to have something to back it up, or you have no credibility and you're just wasting everyone's time. And that's kind of obvious. You're just a useless sack of shit troll who just sits there and makes noises like you're saying something when you're not saying anything at all. I'm not saying that the core part of draft science theory depends on pull. Well, that's what you just said. I don't understand. Didn't he just say that? I mean, really, didn't he just say that? Have you still not realized that the core of your theory depends on pull? What? So I'm not obligated to provide any evidence. I am saying that the core. Okay, he's saying that the core. All right. Part of draft science theory depends on pull. Okay, whatever. He is making that assumption without even realizing it. Well, I just don't even understand. So yeah, there's no way that can make any sense. It's just idiotic. I've clearly asserted it's up, and there's no way to make up into down, so you're going to lose this argument decisively if you would ever have the balls to have it. P.S. And the reason I don't like draft science is because he is a bigot. So I'm a bigot for what reason? There are billions of religious people. Oh, religious people. The poor, innocent religious people. I'm a bigot against the fucking witch burning, minds everybody else's business people. Oh, the people you mean who are real bigots. Okay, who want to go back to owning slaves and, everything in the Bible is true and great. We should beat our women and they should just be barefoot and washing the dishes and shutting up, bitch. Fuck the religious kooks. Fuck them in the ass till they're all fucking dead. That's not bigotry. It's a genuine and real hatred and despise for the profound ignorance for a philosophy full of horrible defects. It's a disgusting philosophy. This whole you're better than philosophy. That's all it is. And you're going to have the balls to call somebody else a bigot? These fucking lunatics threw Kevorkian in jail for 7 years for doing exactly what somebody wanted him to do. Exactly what they wanted him to do, and you put him in jail for it, you fuck. Fuck you people till you are dead. There are billions of religious people who should be fucked in the ass until yeah, who are decent people. Name one. There's no decent religious person. They're an obscenity to intelligence, a disgusting obscenity to intelligence. There's no fucking point in having a brain if you're going to fill it with that kind of dog shit. Ugh. Minding their own business. Where are these mind your own business fuckers? I haven't seen them. I've seen them running to the gun store, to shoot people for Jesus. Well, they're so invested in their fucking lame ass religion that they're scared to death to die. So they're going to fucking heaven, and yet they seem scared to fucking death of death. Oh man, wanting to convert everyone else. Yeah, right. So show me the ones who aren't trying to convert everybody to their fucking philosophy, or who aren't trying to impose it on anybody. How many even the Quakers or whatever, how many people are allowed to move to Quakerville and start open their little business or something if they're not one of them? Oh yeah, that's right, none. People like DraftScience make their life difficult. I wish I could make their life difficult. I wish. Because anti-religion bigotry is considered acceptable these days. Great, fantastic, but I don't even see where that's true, but fine. Fantastic. Then we're progressing more than I thought we were. But bigotry is bigotry. Well, it's not bigotry if it's based on reasoning, asshole. The whole point of bigotry is superficial, pigeonholing, prejudice kind of thing. Okay, so bigotry is actualizing prejudice. Where's the evidence that I'm prejudiced against religious people for no good reason? Oh, that's right. I have plenty of good reasons. No matter how fashionable it may be. Again, I've certainly done it regardless of the fashionability of it. Sorry for the off topic. Yeah, fuck you till dead, of course. But I wanted to make it clear the reasons I dislike DraftScience. Well, I'll make my reasons clear. The reason why I hate you is because you're like religious people. You're a fake and a phony and a fucking fraud. You have no fucking integrity. You believe in some fucking God and you can't even stand up and announce it and say this is who I am and this is what I believe. You're such a fucking pitiful coward. You think you can impose your fucking dogma on other goddamn people and you have fucking no confidence in yourself, you fucking piece of slying scum. You're just such a fake and a phony. Alright, it has nothing to do with his theory. So you're just announcing right out loud that you're just a disruptor. You're just a pain in the ass. You're the bigot, right? You're going to sit there and cause trouble because of some other thing you disagree with me about on a science channel. So you're going to fuck it up because you have a problem, like whether I have long hair or I have blue eyes or something. Even if I was a bigot, how would it be relevant? Do you think other people should behave that way? That everybody should behave that way? So whatever I can find, any defect I can find in a human being, that's the only thing I should see, and we should just make trouble all the time. And you think that's civilization. You think that'll work out. That won't work out, asshole. All the dissidents are nut jobs and are not much better than the mainstream. Well, that I'll agree. Much I don't buy either. Well, you're saying you're basically buying it by accusing me of having a pole philosophy. But anyway, for what it's worth, DraftScience and Bill Gates are the only dissidents who are entertaining. So again, it's all about you, isn't it? So you're defending this whole religion crap, and all you got to say is, it's about me, it's about me, it's about me. Entertain me. Feed me, feed me. You fucking piece of shit. Ugh, what a piece of crap. Alright, religions do not tolerate difference. They are bigoted and deliberately very divisive and use the most powerful forms of superstitions, manipulations possible to drive people. They're propagandists and they're bullies, clearly. You know, attempting to use the law to suppress people, imprison people for benign behaviors like having sex in their own fucking house. You again assert that draft science depends on poll, yet it's obvious it doesn't. So until you provide an argument and some evidence, we can only safely conclude you're talking out of your ass. You know, he's talking out of something worse than that. He's talking out of the religious psychology. Yes, he's a religious kook talking like a religious kook, explaining how we don't have a right to think he's a kook. Yeah. Yikes to you and just yikes. What is the intentional non-presentation of evidence? What is well, whatever that is. The I was just pretending to be an imbecile defense? Or are you a Dracula-esque looking movie villain? Well, he's obviously some kind of squirming piece of scum. I mean, he's more like Jabba the Hutt, I imagine. Are you now kneading your wrinkly hands and yelling squirm in your ignorance between lightning strikes behind your castle? Well, whatever, all this poetry doesn't quite necessary. Are you a big fat asshole is all you should ask. Gary, about my name, try saying my name a bunch of different ways. No, I don't think I'll do that. You'll get it. I don't really want to get it. You write it perv action. What's somebody supposed to say? Okay, exclamation point. I'm supposed to sit there and work at that to figure out what it really means? Oh, fuck you. Too much. Such bullshit. There's intentionally no space between the words. So I don't know how that helps any. So whatever you're saying. I mean, you can't even just... You're like the asshole saying I have a poll theory. I'm supposed to sit there and waste my time figuring out how you are... whatever, got a code, I have to have the secret decoder thingy or whatever, the Rosetta Stone to figure out what your fucking name means. It's just some stupid wordplay. Well, I couldn't care less. I hate wordplay, blah, 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 blah. Turn two existing words into another existing words and ta-da. Ironic pun. Well, it's too ironic for me to be bothered with. Quite the opposite of multiple accounts in my case. This is my label in just about any social media I inhabit. Well, I hate even calling this social media. I mean, fuck. You mean everybody who posts a video on the fucking internet's a social mediaist? I mean, it's just disgusting. I'm not doing any fucking social bullshit. So no artificial boosting in my case. I'm just happen to have the Amendum channel recommended to me by some other somewhat rational channel host. And months later, he mentioned Amendum again, after which I checked the channel out, blah, 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 who cares? Lo and behold, safe for the world-destroying attitude. So you know, the primary point of the fucking channel, so it, you know, he doesn't agree with, but he agrees with whatever, all the other conclusions, which seems kind of ironic in itself. So many of our philosophical conclusions matched. Well, then the end conclusion should also match that, oh, fuck, this is bullshit. I used to work on a script for an animation series that concerned itself with justice, but I never came to fruition. Golden rule, utilitarianism, what ultimately does and does not really matter. Yeah, well, imposition, you should throw that word in there. Do you understand that concept? Evolutionary psychology questions. Well, I don't think there is any evolutionary psychology, but whatever. Communication, purity, you name it, we probably both give you a similar answer. Well, I'm not too sure, but okay. Bear in mind, he's almost double my age and focused harder on these questions, which kind of speaks for the point I'm making here. I don't know if it really does, but whatever. It's about arguments that just keep withstanding scrutiny. It's about arguments that never provoke anything called a rational response. They just end up provoking crap from idiots saying irrational things like it's a pull theory. And being honest with yourself, even if your arguments end up devaluing your own preferences, past choices, and identity. Yes, the truth hurts. So many matching similar conclusions in spite of respective cultures and geography. Yeah, I bet I find that worthy of investigation. You bet I find that worthy of investigation. Yes, clearly he came to the channel a little bit hostile, and frankly, he's still kind of annoying. But whatever. One day I checked out this physics channel, and of course I was a little lost in the beginning, but what crystallized over time was, lo and behold, the same criticisms of the same topics in pop science documentaries. My 16-year-old self placed in his room and angrily shaking his fist at a dead dude with messy hair. There's absolute time. Fuck this fucking fucker. So he had the same impulse to this non-answer to the question. It's not even this huge goofy loophole that somehow time changes when no, things break when you move them. If time was a dimension, it could only ever be half of one, and there is no up without down, or a diameter without only left. Yes, the whole idea that they've inverse square lawed time is hilarious, right? Because that's essentially what they've done, and where's the other? How do you make time move in 2 dimensions? So then you got to have 5 dimensions. But anyway, I'm sorry that all directions you can point to are within the 3 dimensions. That's a quote of something. But yes, that's the way it works. Multiverse is just physics equivalent of megalomania symptom, something like that. Solithia, whatever. What do you mean? A curve is shorter than a line. Yeah, on Earth's surface maybe, and even when only practically and not in principle. Well, clearly curved lines, right, are not shorter than straight lines. Yeah, a magnet is clearly radiating spherically and magnetized things to come to a standstill at the end of their paths. I don't know what that means. And magnetized things come to a standstill at the end of their paths. I don't know what that means, but yes, clearly they're radiating. If you're going to, and clearly gravity's doing the same thing. It's a radial straight line force, as Faraday said. Alright, I looked at 10 of these slit experiment animations and can I see the machine now? What was the thickness of the walls? How far is the projection away? How do you see if you shot a single photon electron? Also, are you implying these are the same? Well, you can know you're shooting singular ones just on the fact that they leave and they land somewhere, and you can count how many land, and if you can count them, then they're coming pretty slowly. Also, you're implying those are the same? Seriously, I kept that shit in mind forever. So again, I wouldn't have phrased it that way. The implications of the single photon experiment, and they just the fact that they didn't let it phase them, right? So they had this double slit concept of the photons are interfering with each other, and all of a sudden it couldn't be the photons are interfering with each other, like water goes through and the different water, is going different directions, but it has adhesion, so it blends it and creates a new pattern. Well, then when they found out when you send single photons, it does exactly the same thing. They didn't even let it phase them. They just made up this horse shit, and that's because photons aren't really photons. They split into wave thingies, and the wave thingies do it. So they didn't even let the cruel hard truth get in their way at all. That their theory was nonsense. Instead, they just put wings on the unicorn. The horse with a horn. They just we'll put wings on it. Alright, don't demean my investigation, or do. I like the view from your long-legged mount. I don't know what that means, but whatever. I myself, look at all this stuff these people type, it's amazing. I myself had more or less stopped looking into physics myself in favor of trackling communication and said, yes, I believe them when I see evidence, but I'll keep my opinion in a superposition until then. He typed it all, you know. Anyway, in a wordplay way. And then I got duped by the assumption that they wouldn't sink billions of monkeys into stupid shit. And headlines that just kept doubling down. Fuck LIGO, fuck me. Fucking LIGO, fuck me. Oh, anyway. So, as soon as I arrived here, yes, I dug up my own observations and choose a champion in the battle of physics models. It just happens to make more rational sense at once. It's more elemental, and it explains better. I mean, no, like I said, where's the better theory of magnetism? There just isn't anyone anywhere close. It took some work losing all the tainted explanations and gathered from documentaries and articles. It took some work losing all the, it's tainted. Alright, anyway. A pressurized visible universe is ... somewhat comparable to my assumption of infinite space. Well, I don't know how do you assume something you can't even comprehend, but fine. And it will never be more than that, an assumption. If I had any better theory to go on, I would. I'm not a fan of the two forces. Well, why? It's pretty simple. Two isn't that much more than one. But I got nothing better that's still consistent with itself anywhere. Well, I'm just saying I don't think there's any way to do magnetism without it, frankly, in any kind of rational way. You can't make two opposite things happen without two opposite things to work with. So I have an obligation to stick with it until I see it broken, preferably by my own input. Okay? Try to break it. That's how you test it. But until then, my two objectives here are understand a coherent version of linked intricacies, sharpen the blades, honing the theory in case I need it, and yes, the entertainment is a plus. Okay, that was an ad hominem. You can be a good scientist and still be a child molester. That's gold. Yes, exactly. I think I did say that somewhere, didn't I? Anyway, but anyway, superior mind. That's nonsense generalization about religions and religious people. So this is the woke guy. It's a valid generalization, and the principles are in the book. Okay, so you can't stand on the book full of evil crap and say I didn't mean it. The vast majority of religious people just want to mind their own. No, they don't want to do that. So it's, again, a ludicrous joke to say the vast majority are minding their own business. A ludicrous joke. They don't care if someone else believes in their religion or not. Well, they seem to care very much that everybody behave as if they believed in their religion. So what's the difference? Yes, they're totally insincere. They don't believe in their God, but they think everybody else needs to. Because everybody else is an evil asshole without their magical God belief. They have to be as scared of God or they're going to be a menace. Because they can't understand anything. That's what they think. And they're retards. Because they're the same way. They don't believe in God. You can see it in their behavior. So they're just liars. In any case, this is off topic. I am not a religious person. So why are you defending them? What's the point of it? I'm not a lunatic, but I'll defend lunatics. But neither do I accept bigotry. So again, it's not bigotry. If you have a rational reason to hate something, or what? You think we were bigoted against the Nazis? You think that's how it worked? We were just bigoted? There wasn't any cause for stopping them. We just were bigots against bigots. That's the joke of it, right? Oh, amazing, stupid fuck. For or against religions. Let's see. This is just this is so off. I didn't think I'd be getting into all this nonsense. Computer's bugging out. So maybe I have to take a break here. Maybe this video's dead. Yeah, maybe it's dead. I'll just use the keyboard to bail here. Alright, seems to be working better now. Let's hopefully see what happens. Anyway, see if it's a video. About Pull being central to Gary's theory, I already wrote that I have no intention of helping him out, whatever that means. You don't seem to understand the concept of public rights and responsibilities. I don't even know what that could possibly be in this context. Gary has the right to present his opinion in the public space. Oh, right, you have a right to heckle. Oh, okay. And we have the right to laugh at him. Yes, but you can do that. I'm just saying that it's not of much value. Oh, you're laughing. That means something. It's like saying, oh, Trump is having a good time. Like I should take that as a standard. Rudy Giuliani knows what good art is. Fuck you. No one has the responsibility to educate him. It's not about educating me. You're making a public statement, a public scene, so to speak. Then, it's on you. I mean, you're the one just pointing out how you don't have anything. You got nothing. Or to help him out in any way whatsoever. A number of people have tried to help him out over the years. Whatever this is, more vague nonsense to other people have been rude and obnoxious. Okay, and his reaction is always the same toddler tantrum of yelling and covering his eyes and ears. Well, there's just no evidence of that, right? I'm reading your crap. I read a substantial portion of just troll comments, and I really shouldn't be wasting any time on it. I guess if people wrote more better comments, I'd have something to work with. And yeah, this would just be dismissed as the nonsense it is, the waste of time that it is. So I'm just again pointing out that this is all the critics have. This is the best they can do as a criticism. It's so fucking weak. Not that we just sit back and enjoy his predictable tantrum. So again, more bullshit about a tantrum. It seems you're the one that's got the fucking petty little problems. Oh, you don't believe in the same things I do, so I have to treat you like shit. Okay. And bouts of self-pity. So where's that? I'm just pitying the fact that the human race is doomed because of these assholes, this idiocracy that's been allowed to fester. The only people who accept Gary's theory to any extent are people who themselves admit that they don't know physics. And you do? Oh, yeah, that's funny. I gotta laugh out of that. Anyone who understands the experimental data and empirical logic. So there's such a thing as empirical logic. No, you have that backwards. You have empirical evidence. Can only smile and shake their head at Gary's simple-minded Lego universe. Well, it's not Lego, obviously, but frankly, the fact that you've made one out of gremlins and little special magic invisible thingies and little fake ESP is to your discredit. It is a toddler simplistic universe proposed by somebody with an emotional maturity of a toddler. So again, this idea, he says he's not religious, but clearly he thinks the universe isn't run by some simple processes, that it has some sort of magical process, like little gods. If there isn't a big god, there's lots of little gods running the universe. Oh, and I can't be bothered replying to the sock account. So again, he keeps making accusations for which he has no evidence, and then he talks about something like integrity, which he obviously doesn't have any of. Happy trails. Yeah, whatever. He's a popcorn chewer. Isn't that nice? So again, he's just a typical example of the average selfish fucking religious kook. I speak of dominant religions, and that means by which they've become dominant, killing people. Anyway, who does not oppose the spread of dangerous superstitions is aiding to abetting in a crime. Well, anyway, yeah, people who aren't going to stop it are exactly, yeah, you're as guilty as the fucking perpetrators, frankly. If you don't do anything to inhibit them. I mean, you won't even throw some marbles on the street when the rapist is chasing the woman. The harmful discriminations and arrested development that follow in its wake. It's ironic that people use the word bigotry when describing someone who disagrees with systematic discrimination. Religion is designed to oppose diversity. It is brutally intolerant in all cases. It's not in many cases. They're intolerant in all cases. Of course it's genocidal. It's proud of it. It says it in the Bible. Kill all the women and children. That's your order from God. It's almost like calling someone racist for being against actual violent racist behaviors. It's exactly like. It's not almost like. It's the same as. I already wrote that. I have no intention in helping him out. I know the answer, but I'm not telling. You sound like a child, right? Everything he's accusing everybody else of is exactly what he's made out of, which is shit. He was raised by shit, obviously. His father was a nutless criminal, and his mother was an ignorant slut. Clearly. It's obvious. The only people in his family should have taken care of business. If he has any brothers and sisters, they should find him so embarrassing that they should find a way to have an accident. The only people who accept Gary's theory, characterization, and fallacies, clearly you don't understand much of anything at all, especially logic and irony. Can't be bothered replying to the sock account. Again, I'm not perv action, and it doesn't matter whether you were. You're going to make accusations. You ought to have a shred of evidence for them, something. Will you provide some actual logical arguments and evidence for your ridiculous assertions or be dismissed? Well, how do you dismiss the heckler, right? Oh, we have to drag him out of the theater. That's all they want. They want the spectacle. They want to pretend that they're right and everybody else is wrong because he's quite obviously you're not accepting this complete distraction, this complete pointless get off the subject. All right, you clearly have trouble understanding simple English. I wrote in my very first post, I have no intention of cluing him in. So again, this is more just nonsense. By posting on a public forum, he invites public comment. Is that what I'm doing? I'm inviting any kind of comment? No, that's exactly not the rules. If I was like you, if you could find a single shred of evidence that I ever treat anybody in comments on their videos like you treat me, then you'd have some kind of excuse. But there's no excuse. I've made no contract to say I will accept the rude, I will accept completely bullshit accusations made, lies. I'll accept you lying about who I am and what I've done. No, I won't accept that. So fuck you. I care not a whit, or you say a wote, what he or his flock think of my comment, because anyone who buys his theory proves, well, again, it's not about buying it, okay? It doesn't cost anything. So that's just more bullshit. Unlike Ken Wheeler, I'm not making a living or profiting off of it. His theory proves ipso facto that they lack basic fifth grade. So again, you're just going to keep citing the thing that they lack, and yet you don't ever cite it. So what's the quote? Where's the piece of experimental data with which anything I'm saying is inconsistent? So why don't you prove what you're saying rather than just saying it? It's just all these empty assertions, and that's all they got. So I'm just pointing out, the only reason I'm reading this is because this is all the counter-arguers can provide as a counter-argument. They have nothing. They have no evidence, no logic, no reasoning explaining why their convoluted bullshit standard model nonsense has anything close to the integrity as a theory that mine has in terms of its simplicity and its coverage. They're never going to make any sense out of their physics because it's founded on two nonsensical notions that the same force, it's obviously the same kind of force, gravity and virtual photons, are two different things. It's never going to work. My comment was for those of us who watch his daily show for its unique blend of megalomania, safe self-pity. So again, this, all these things that there's no evidence of. The megalomaniac is Ken Wheeler. Okay, he's the one that's got to point out, I did it, and I did this, and I did that. I. I'm making physics arguments. On the contrary, comedic tantrums and dime store philosophy. Well, it's more store than your philosophy, clearly. You won't even articulate yours. You're such a coward. Okay, you missed all that. No wonder you are a Gary devotee. And no wonder you are a coward. A nameless, shapeless pussy sitting behind rocks, farting in other people's direction and thinking you're some kind of great warrior. You're a pathetic coward. Alright, so we will scroll up and say this was all a chain of bullshit. Yeah, look at it. There's a lot of bullshit here, isn't there? Yes, there is. A tremendous amount of bullshit. Hard to believe I read all that crap. Badly, but, it was read. Alright, so obviously block the WOTE account, number 73. Let's see, pull their weight. Okay, this is some crap about West Coast people don't pull their weight or some other kind of just completely horseshit. By the way, I'm not talking about you, by the way. Then why'd you bring it up? Hey, did you know that Kennedy was assassinated on your birthday? Yeah, duh. But even the way, when Kennedy was assassinated, did we go out and start a war? Did we go kill all the people who were anti-Kennedy? It's just, clearly it was a different time. People took it. Martin Luther King was killed. Did the world burn down? No. Little places, maybe. So anyway, the masses aren't ready for this level of genius. That's funny. Sorry, I meant to say what was it you suggested the distance between electrons and electrons to be responsible for. I don't know what you're talking about, so yeah, it's probably not going to be a great interaction here. How fast, preferably in percentage of force speed, are the slowest and fastest electrical conductors you know of? Well, copper, and so you've got gold and silver. I don't know whether silver's supposed to be faster, but there's probably some other weird little metal that's a little quicker. But the whole point is the amount of resistance. So you're really just talking about impurities often that are resistance to the flow of the electricity. So it's, I don't know, how do you measure that? But they're very fast. Electricity goes through wires really, really fast. It can go through really fast. Okay, I've always imagined it as a phenomenon more related to sound than light, but it's obviously faster. Well, it's only like sound in the sense that it has to be transferred from molecule to molecule to molecule. So you're basically, in sound it's molecules. And obviously the tighter the molecules, the more rigid the sound travels through them quite well. The more loose they are, the more the sound's distorted, like maybe underwater or something. The atoms are exchanging electron pressure, and that's what a conductor does. It allows the atoms to exchange their pressure, so they're connected enough, the electrons, that if one set of electrons gets more ping pong balls in it, the other ones have to adjust to that extra pressure. Regarding the slow ones, is there a pressure conductivity threshold under which it doesn't explicitly generate electricity? Well, the point is all the resistance is turned into heat. So the less well the conductor works, like in the case of lightning, it's not a great conductor, it's a pretty shitty one, the atmosphere, and it generates a lot of heat. And that's what we see, that's the light being created. But remains some kind of slight wobbly movement or creates another state of almost electric. Well, again, it turns into melting, so you can't really do your experiment, because whatever you're going to do the experiment with, it's going to melt. Obviously it would have to be very small pressure difference. yes, obviously the conductor can be really, really crappy. You could say that everything is a conductor, and that just some of them are really, really, really bad at it. And so most of the energy you put in will only be converted into heat, and it'll never be converted. I mean, it will transmit somewhat through this stuff, but it'll transmit so poorly that 99% of what you put in gets converted into heat, and only 1% stays a voltage, a transfer of pressure. So anyway, all right, so that took all much longer than I thought it would. So let me pause and see if I have enough time or will to add anything to this video. Seems like it's probably enough. Alright, well, I was going to add a little bit on gravity, but I think I'll start or attempt to start a conversation with anyone who really cares about this nuclear physics stuff, mu mesons, all this kind of junk, what they see in cloud chambers and why they deduce the things they do, and whether it's even reasonable, some of the theories they have. Because the more you analyze this, even the nuclear physics, it looks trivial. In terms of how they've decided, oh, it's a particle, and it's sort of a trivial explanation. So this is another aspect of understanding the different way you can look at something and understand the difference. So the idea, so I'll leave a link below to this video. It's a half hour, 35 minutes, old 1960 whatever thing, and I just wanted to go through some of the premises in it just as points and say, is there any logic to this? How does it make sense to you? Because I can't make it make sense in terms of how they're deciding things. So anyway, the idea would be is that some of these little subatomic particles that they see in these accelerators, these little bits, the idea is they're moving 99.99998 or something, the speed of light, some of them. Really fast cosmic ray things they're calling it, or whatever they want to, make it into. But anyway, it's going really fast is the idea. And so these things are going really, really fast, so they can tell time dilation effects because they're going so fast that they're getting tremendously time dilated, like 10 to 1 kind of time dilation. So for every minute, it's 10 minutes for them kind of thing. Pretty strong dilation, or even 22. But anyway, and so I would give you as an explanation of what this is, why this looks like more than it is, or why it changes, is partially because if you can imagine this thing is going this kind of speed, it means that just about everything in it is moving in the same direction as whatever force would be pushing it. So if I did have a force behind it, like there was a whole bunch of radiation, a stream of a big long ray, okay, of, like, think of X-rays, but much stronger than X-rays in the sense that the little bits, the wave, is even tighter, than an X-ray. So they're really close together, and they're all obviously moving the speed of light in a ray-like form. And say that's behind one of these particles, right? And this particle is almost going the speed of light. So this stuff is only going a little tiny bit faster than this stuff. So you can understand that over distance, right? That say if there was 100 of these things, that, okay, now there's only 99 because they're moving through this. They're moving through this object. And in a sense, I would argue they're sort of pushing it, right? Well, what I would argue is this object is already going the speed of light, and this is going the speed of light. So the fastest you can make something go is the speed of light, and there's nothing really stopping you from making one of these little bits go the speed of light, unless it hits something to stop it. Or, obviously, as pointed out, the faster something's going, the more it needs behind it to push it because of drag. So that the whole drag subject comes up. So then, if you understand that concept, that it's going to run into more energy than it's can possibly be behind it. But that's the whole point, is that we don't know how much energy is behind it. So the whole point would be is that this they don't account for. What's pushing that is what they don't account for. And the fact is this ray can be an indeterminate length if it's coming from some sun, far away, or some neutron star, or something that's actually producing some sort of radiation. This radiation can be a tremendous amount of radiation. It just keeps flying out of the object because it's burning up. So anyway, so what's the difference between the force and the matter bit? Is the matter bit can interact and the force doesn't. And so then it hits something, and then pieces fly off and decelerate and blah 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 blah, and that's what they make all this crap out of. But the point is they don't really account for what could possibly, that this particle isn't just the particle, it's could have force behind it. And that's what you're going to see in the impact. You're going to see more than just this thing. You're going to see that there's a big gorilla, right? It's not just the car, it's the gorilla behind the car pushing it. And they don't really account for that even existing as a possibility. I'm just saying those kind of holes are just kind of gaping. So anyway, on this particular video, they're talking about the creation of these things in the atmosphere, and there's this interactions. They say protons are cosmically flying through space, but I don't think they have any evidence that protons do that. It's helium nuclei, and they hit something, and then that creates a proton, a high speed proton, not a high frequency, a high speed proton. Well, anyway, this stuff is raining down on us, these mu mesons, right? And they're coming down, and what they do is have an experiment to detect them. So they put a photodetector, one photodetector, and then they have this thing called a simulator, and the thing goes through, and when it goes through, it creates a photon in the simulator, so it went through. And then the idea is that it creates a second photon if it's going slow enough to decay. So if it's lost all its momentum and it's going to decay now because it's not moving, it creates a second photon. So as I'm hearing the experiment, they're basically just taking the feed from that, the photon detector, and putting it into an oscilloscope, okay, that has a trace on it. The trace starts when there's a photon. And every time there's a photon, there's a trace. And you'll see this thing will just keep turning on, because there's lots of these things creating photons. And the idea is then the trace starts with each initiation. But the point is once the trace starts, and if there's another photon event, it doesn't restart with the new photon. It doesn't go back to the beginning and stop the trace and then start a new trace. So if it's already started a trace because it saw a photon, and now it's going to initiate, so it's on its trace. Well, if another muon came in at the same time, like in that moment, that 1/1,000,000th of a second, okay, if there was another muon that comes in, it's going to be a photon in the middle of a trace. So it's going to be a photon in the middle of the trace. So you have a whole bunch of them happening here that start traces, and then you have periodic ones that are in the middle of a trace. How do they tell? So the simple question of this one little part of the video is if they only have this one detector and they're putting the feed into the trace, I mean, how do they tell if two muons happen to just be like one muon's here and the next muon's here? You know what I mean? They create photons, and they're in the middle of the trace. So the trace is going across, and another muon comes in. So how do they tell the decay photon from the first photon that would cause the trace? And so they're saying every one of these is a decay photon. Well, I guess the simple question is, how have they eliminated that these aren't just new muons coming through? That this photon was created by a muon. It wasn't created by our meson. Meson. I mean, all these silly words. So anyway, how can they tell? So if the meson creates in the simulator a photon, and then decay creates another photon, how can they tell that this decay photon isn't just a regular photon? Because I don't see any instrument, any way they could possibly tell the difference. So another meson could just be responsible for what they're calling the decay photon. There's no evidence that these are decay photons. They could just be whatever you call it, coincidental, mesons that happen to be. I mean, they're raining down, all the time, and I'm just saying that they can hit within the time of a trace. The trace is a long period of time, technically. I mean, in a way, even though it's a millionth of a second, it's still a long period of time considering how many of these things are coming through. And so why couldn't you just have the coincidence of two mesons that come in at about the same time, and then they'll end up both being on the same trace? And there's no evidence that they've accounted for that. I couldn't find any evidence they accounted for it. So I'm just saying, if somebody knows any evidence that they accounted for it, or has any explanation, I would appreciate it. There's lots of other problems. Wait till they get to the bricks and all the other bullshit. See when they're on the top of the mountain, they have 3 feet of bricks, steel bricks, 10 tons. And then when they go to sea level, they only have 60% of that. So whatever, 2 feet of bricks. And that's because they're approximating how much atmosphere there is between sea level and the top of the mountain. It seems a preposterous thing to estimate. And they're full bricks. So, I mean, it's not like their answer was, well, shave the bricks in half. We only have one layer of bricks will be a half layer of bricks. So, however they're approximating it, it's a huge approximation where they don't even care about the full brick, right? So it's a full brick of steel. And, there's no evidence that their answer was that the atmosphere is, 7.8 bricks or 7.6 bricks. Somehow it came out to whole numbers of bricks. I mean, that doesn't seem very likely. So it seems a very crude estimate. But the estimate is critical to the number of mesons they're going to detect. It's going to be completely dependent on them getting that answer right. They have to exactly predict how much drag the atmosphere is going to produce, how many mesons it's going to stop. They have to exactly predict that for this experiment to even mean anything. Anyway, I didn't want to get to the other parts that are bullshit. So I'll play this little bit, just so you get my point.
Go all the way through.
All right,
The
so
sweep passes by each one of these
let me
major
just.
divisions in a
All right, so they're plugging the oscilloscope into the amplifier.
The deflection plates of the oscilloscope.
All right, so all they've really done, they've taken the photomultiplier, the thing is detecting the photon, and this is the thing detecting the photon. They plugged it into the oscilloscope. That's all we got.
So that the starting pulse is visible at the beginning of the trace. Most of these sweeps indicate the passage of a mu meson clear through the scintillator.
So they're just saying, oh, these are the mesons coming in. It starts a trace. As soon as one comes in, it starts the trace. So that's why they're all at the beginning, is because the trace starts when the meson hits, when it gets a photon. A photon means a line goes across.
This spot is where the oscilloscope beam rests until a mu meson enters the scintillator and starts the scope beam sweeping. The pulses that start the sweep are displayed over here. Notice that their heights vary.
Yes, well, the heights of these secondary ones also vary, so that's not telling you anything.
Because some of the mesons go through just a corner of the scintillator, making a small flash of light, and hence a small signal, whereas others go all the way through.
Right, so we don't have any standard here at all, in terms of the pulse, the brightness, the length of the ray of photon.
The sweep passes by each one of these major divisions in a microsecond. Right now, it's sweeping
So a microsecond, whatever that is, but yes, a millionth of a second.
across 7.5 microseconds. Later, it will sweep across all 9 millionths of a second, which you can...
So all 9 millionths of a second. So this just means that's how much more time it is. So the sweep is consuming a big hunk of time. So it's not a nothing sweep. If each subdivision is a microsecond, then you're talking about 10 microseconds.
See. That may sound pretty fast, but one of our mesons enters the scintillator, passes clear through, and leaves in only about 2 billionths of a second.
So they're just talking about the speed of the thing, so it goes through the thing very fast, but obviously the photon doesn't care about that. You either make a photon or you don't make a photon.
Is about 1/100th of the width of one of those starting pulses.
And why is it making a photon? It's obviously hitting something, and what's called the simulator is just a bunch of plastic, I guess, or whatever, clear plastic, and so it's hitting some atom in the simulator and obviously causing the photon because there's a collision, and the collision creates the photon. So it's already a defective meson after it's created the first photon, you could argue. It's already been changed as a thing. But anyway, we'll get to the part here.
So the width of the pulse has nothing to do with how long it takes our mesons to go through the plastic scintillator, but is determined entirely by the electronics.
Most of the mesons shoot right on through the scintillator. We can stop some of them in the scintillator, however, by slowing them down in this 2.5-foot thickness of iron. Incidentally, that's a big pile of iron. It weighs more than 10 tons. We want to stop some of the new mesons in the scintillator in order to observe their radioactive decay.
Right, so there's two features here. There's first seeing one because it hits something, and then there's some idea that it doesn't necessarily have to hit something, but it decays. So it's not like it's going to create a photon the first time it goes through the simulator, but then it's going to create a decay photon. So even that part I don't quite understand. So the slower they're going, the less likely they are to make a photon, right? You could sort of understand that if I've slowed them down, well, now they don't have the energy to make a photon, so they're not even going to trigger the oscilloscope. So the photon that's going to be created, after you've slowed one down, you're only going to have the one photon. You're not going to be able to have one and then measure the distance to the second photon. So that's another assumption that I'm saying, though that doesn't make any sense. Do you have any evidence that the ones you slowed down are the ones that are making the decay photon? And exactly how they do that, how they create the same photon coming in through the simulator when you've slowed them down, how they have the energy to create the first photon.
That brings us to our second point. We already know how to detect new mesons. Now we want to find out how long it takes them to decay, so as to use them as clocks. When a positive new meson decays, it gives off a neutrino, an antineutrino, and one positive charged particle called a positron.
Yeah, so there's no evidence that any of those things are real things. So whatever. Play along. There's either protons or electrons. And it all depends on their velocity, what you think they are. So they just give these things different names because it's a proton going too fast. They'll call that an electron or positron because it's going too fast to be a proton. But it's only because they think there's some reason that a proton can't go that fast.
When the mu meson enters our scintillator,
Or too slow, in the sense that it doesn't have enough energy. It's not big enough. See, they're using mass and velocity. And the problem with that is like in gravity, mass is irrelevant. As much as it's relevant to the gravity you make, it's irrelevant to the gravity you're in. So if I make the Earth into a bunch of tiny little atoms, their curvature will be exactly the same as the big giant thing. So the big giant thing with huge mass bends in the gravity just as much as a little tiny atom. So it doesn't matter the size. I could put a refrigerator in space and I could put a feather next to it. And the two things will orbit at exactly the same velocity. So it doesn't matter what mass is. You can't, so you got to be really careful using mass and velocity to tell you what a particle is. Okay, because the feather can look just like a refrigerator. It'll take the same path in the magnetic field. So they're just guessing whether its mass changed or its velocity changed. And I would argue that how much it bends is irrelevant. Mass is irrelevant. And the only thing that's relevant is velocity.
it makes a flash of light. If it stops and decays in the scintillator, the positron makes a second flash of light. That puts a second pulse on our oscilloscope trace.
So this is all more just, I would say this is kind of junk. I mean, whether a positron makes a second pulse, let's just concede that there's a second decay. Okay, it hits something and then it's going to decay. Okay, because it hits something and another photon will make. Even if I accept that theory, which I think is mushy as hell, how can I tell the difference between that second pulse of light being a decay pulse or that second pulse of light just being another muon that went through the scintillator? That's the thing I don't understand, where they made that distinction. How they demonstrated that they can detect the difference with one photodetector. How does the photodetector know when two muons come in at the same time? How does it know? oh, those are nearly the same time. How does it know that that's not a decay photon? There's just no way to know.
Scope trace at the instant the mu meson decays. So now we're ready to stop a lot more of these mu mesons and measure the time distribution of the radioactive decays. So Dave, push the scintillator under the iron, and I'll get back to the scope.
So you'll just see they're just going to slide the pulse that tells you a new trace was started off the screen.
Let's have a look.
And then they'll slide the line off the screen. so
You may notice that there are fewer sweeps than before. That's because the iron not only slows down the mesons, but it actually stops some before they can get to our scintillator. You also see that most of them still go all the way through, thus giving just one pulse.
So again, that's just their assumption that the second pulse isn't another meson that came in at the same time. I'm just saying there's no evidence that it's detecting the difference between the second pulse of light and the first pulse. They all look like first pulses from the detector's point of view. There's no way for it to tell the difference. So why aren't these just incidents where the two mesons came into the simulator almost at the same time? And if they come in almost at the same time, it'll look like a second pulse.
There. Did you see that one? About 2 divisions.
See, so he's
out
talking about
from the
ones out
starting
here.
pulse.
So
Let's see some more.
any one that shows up out here, they're
There.
saying is a decay. They're saying that's from decay.
There.
There's absolutely no
Now we'll
reason
look at the next
to
one in a
not
little
say
more
that's
detail.
just a regular muon coming through, a second muon.
There. That one still has the first pulse on it, where the
Right. So so it still has the first pulse. He's saying it still has the first pulse, okay, and then it's tracing, and there's no reason not to believe, okay, another meson just came in and it's pulsing now while the trace is tracing. There's no reason to say that's a decay muon. I mean, I'm just saying there's no way of telling. If a second muon comes in, there's the first one goes in, makes a pulse. Now the trace starts. If another meson comes in, how do you detect the difference between that and decay? There's no way to tell the difference. You don't have any instrument to tell the difference. The detector's just saying photon. It's not saying decay photon versus original photon. So anyway, that's all I wanted. Just if somebody wants to bother, if they have knowledge of all this nuclear physics bullshit, I'm just saying you concede that yes, they didn't in any way filter for that phenomenon here, clearly. All right. Anyway, maybe they say it's irrelevant. Maybe they say it just doesn't matter how many we get wrong. And I would argue, though, what they really haven't proven is that statistically it would make sense that that happens, that some of them do come together, within that time frame, that the number coming in per size of their simulator would just say this big. See, there's like 1,000 muons come in per square meter, you could argue, or whatever it is. And so if they have something this big, then you're talking about maybe 400 a second. And if they're coming in 400 a second, why couldn't you argue that, 30% of them will come in within the time frame of that trace together? They didn't do any of that math, so they didn't demonstrate how these can't be coincident muons. I guess is the argument. I know this is really a technical subject, and there probably just isn't anybody watching these videos who could be bothered. So anyway, till the next time, and such, so forth and whatnot.